think it's time we can begin. My name is Tora Karlberg, Community Manager at Outvise, and I am your host for today's webinar, Kickstart Your Freelance Journey. Thank you for taking your time today to join us. This is a very special webinar where I give the floor to three well-versed freelancers at Outvise who will share with you their journey, experience, philosophy, and words of wisdom. By the end of this webinar, I hope you will have gained some insight and inspiration to what it's like to be a freelancer in today's digital world. So here we have today's agenda. First, I will briefly introduce Outvise, then introduce our lovely panel speakers. Then we'll move on to the panel discussion and finish with questions from the audience. As according to the agenda, I would like to take a quick minute to briefly introduce Outvise to those not yet familiar with us. Outvise is a Spanish startup headquartered in sunny Barcelona. We are the largest freelance platform for business tech projects. We work with clients from across the globe and offer our freelancers projects from Europe, Africa, all the way to the Middle East. The company came to be in 2014, and we currently have over 35,000 experts on our platform. Now, without further ado, let me introduce the stars of today's webinar. First up, we have Norbert Steinhauser. Norbert is a freelance product strategist, product manager, and product owner for the past 17 years. He created product strategies that have led to investments of more than 4 billion euros. He has a utilization of almost 100%. And prior to working as a freelancer, Norbert held board positions at a security software company, senior positions in product management, marketing, and sales. Thank you so much for being here, Norbert. Next, we have Rafael Mampo. Rafael has 16 years experience in the broadcasting industry. He's best at bridging the technical side to the business side, using advanced data analytics insights, and making a way of working changes happen, as well as managing young professionals to discover and grow their talent, and pushing senior ones to offer their best by mentoring and providing guidance on innovative projects. Thank you so much for being here, Rafael. Finally, we have Sammy Tayara. Sammy is experienced in digital transformation and has 20+ years performing successful digital transformations at a global scale. He is cross-functional and does wonders by bridging business and technology mindsets together. He uses business acumen, technology prowess, talent for innovation, and team coaching skills to produce beautiful, sustainable, and business boosting solutions. Thank you for being here. Thank you, all of you. Now it's finally time to go to the exciting part, the panel discussion. On your screen, you should be able to see 7 questions that the panel will be discussing today. They include a bit about their journey, their opinions, some advice, and experience about working at Outvise. Some questions will be answered by the entire panel and some for specific speakers. If you have other questions that you feel are not being answered, don't hesitate to write them down in the chat or the Q&A, and we will cover them towards the end. Let's begin. So the first question is for the entire panel. What made you decide to start freelancing, and how did you get into the field, and why do you stay? Sammy, would you like to start off with this one?
Yes. Well, I have the entrepreneur personality rooted deep inside me. So freelancing to me is like the minimum viable product for a startup. It is a lower risk than the startup, and it has higher chances of achieving the work-life balance that I'm looking for. Then there was this concept of a digital nomad, which the idea I really like being able to work from anywhere. And I found inspiration in it, and it drives me to persevere along the track of freelancing. So I think that's a big reason. You know, it's being an entrepreneur. It's a key trait of a freelancer, and you are the service. You need to package yourself and sell yourself, basically.
Thank you so much, Sammy. Rafael, would you like to tell us a bit about your journey?
My drivers are first of all is curiosity. I'm a very curious professional, and also, as Sammy said, also this entrepreneurship character. So I started being a freelancer right away when I finished my studies at the university. I'm talking the 80s, 1988 to be exactly. So I remember that all my classmates went to the multinational companies, but it felt that that kind of career was quite boring. So you had to start with, this big company stuff. So I went to a professor of mine that was, he was performing projects as a freelancer, and told him, okay, can I work with you? Okay, but I'm not hiring anyone because I'm a, he said, okay, don't worry. We're going to perform the projects, and then we can, when we are paid, then we can distribute the earnings and everything. So this is the way I started with this. Of course, in my life, in some short periods, I have been also working on a permanent basis, but I prefer freelancing, of course.
Thank you so much. And Norbert, how about you?
Well, thanks for the other two. So Sammy, Rafael, I actually fully agree with what you just said. That's also a very important driver for me. My journey actually into the freelancing world started in 2004. I was working as a senior vice president responsible for product management and marketing at a Swiss-based software company. Shortly before Christmas, the CEO of the company and I got into a heated discussion about product strategy. I told him that his strategy would not work. I was fired 2 days before Christmas. 1 week into the new year, they hired me back as they still needed my expertise. That was my first engagement as a freelancer. It lasted for 3 months, and I sued the company afterwards for wrongful termination. I received a decent settlement and continued the journey of a freelancer for the last 17 years. But this was not the reason why I entered freelancing. My mentor at the time asked me a question that changed my career path. The question was, what are you looking for, power or influence? I knew based on the experience I had, let's say, climbing up the corporate ladder, that I was not looking for power any longer. I was looking for influence. And this is what you get as a freelancer. You get a lot of influence. You don't get the power. You don't have the power of the position any longer, but you are the one that is being asked to help them do things. So exactly like Steve Jobs typically used to state, you don't hire people to tell them what to do. You hire freelancers so they help you do whatever needs to be done. Why do I stay? I like the ability to decide my own future. Now, like Rafael said, it's curiosity that's driving this. Working in any organization, you always have a choice more in the end. Can agree to a decision and commit. You can disagree and commit, or you can leave. Leaving for a freelancer is a lot easier and comes with a lot less issues. If I have 10 projects that lasted each 3 months, nobody would even look twice, as this is considered experience. The main reason why I stay is because it allows me the flexibility I enjoy in my life. I am a German living right outside of Barcelona, mainly working for German companies. So I have the best of those worlds in the end. My utilization as a freelancer has been almost 100%. Why should I change something like that? Oh, just too nice.
That's great. Thank you so much, Norbert. Very well said. Let's move on. So what are some things you wish you knew before you started the freelancing life? I think this will be a great question for Sammy. Would you like to take this?
Okay, well, first, I wish I was more humble when I had an idea 5 years ago to reinvent the consulting business. So I was part of something called the Open Consulting Group, and we were going to, revolutionize the business, because we found it was very hard to match the right consultant with the right clients. There was an issue in there. It was the process wasn't optimized. So then I had to walk back from the idea, because it was a very challenging path to get some of the top consulting gigs, with this kind of startup consulting, how would they say, people with goodwill, but didn't have some missing things that are very important, which is knowledge of the HR procurement process at the big clients. I could be the best consultant out there, the matching my client, but if I'm not integrated or connected with their recruitment process, then it's impossible that I get the gig. So even though I went to some big conferences, I met the CEO, and the CEO liked me and exchanged the business cards and everything. And he said, I need a consultant like you, and I still wouldn't get the gig because I didn't fit in the process. So definitely that was something I wish I knew before I wasted like a year in this direction. Also, I wish I diversified more the channels, trying to get gigs, like not just going to conferences, networking events, also spending too much time on LinkedIn. I thought it would be a good idea, but it's definitely, it burns a lot of time for nothing. So these are the two things I wish I knew, and I wish I knew that there are more channels. For example, companies like Outvise that are a shortcut to get those gigs I'm looking for.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sammy. And so, what would you say is the biggest challenge being a freelancer at the moment? Norbert, would you like to take this?
Sure, happy to do so, Tara. So many freelancers struggled heavily with COVID and the lack of projects, of course. Now the market is quite vibrant again. You can find many different projects via suppliers like Outvise. However, not all of these matchmakers are as professional as Outvise. At the same time, you'll find many more freelancers compared to a few years ago. Some of the less experienced ones are pushing down prices heavily at the moment. While some companies are trying to hire people for hourly or daily rates that are just ridiculously low. As a freelancer, you need to have a good understanding of your market value, but also your market price. You will always be more expensive than an employee, as you will have to bear not only your social insurance cost, but also need to calculate that you might not immediately find a new project once the current one ends. So when you price yourself towards projects, it is good practice to have clarity on what you want to achieve. Be prepared that you will be asked for your hourly or daily rate. Then it is a negotiation, of course. Consequently, you should have defined what your minimum rate is and go with that if you really have to. My own rate differs on the complexity of the project, for example. How much, if any, travel is required today, as my cost of living is higher when I have to travel. But also, I look at how long a project is scheduled to last, because that allows me to actually reduce my efforts in finding the follow-on project, of course. From my perspective, being aware of the market is a continuous challenge for a freelancer. You always need to keep your eyes open. You need to be really with the ear to the ground to understand what projects are out there, what's happening, what is being asked for. So you really need to keep up with the market demands. This means you need and have to continue to invest in your own education. I myself today, I hold 3 university degrees. I have done executive courses at INSEAD, Kellogg, MIT, Columbia. I already have my next educational topics lined up, and I will continue to add courses and certifications to stay relevant in the market. If I don't do that, I'll myself get out of the market, which is just not what I'm, of course, interested in.
Okay, thank you so much, Norbert. Thank you very much. What has helped you get to where you are today, and what advice would you have for others who want to set off in a similar direction? Rafael, can we hear from you?
Yes, it's clear to me that 2 things. The first one is to think of myself as a one-person company, not as an employee, not even as a professional. Because if you think of yourself as a one-person company, then you need to be competitive in the market. You need to see your client, to understand your client. You need to understand your competitors. You need to understand yourself, to see your capabilities, to build yourself as a product. Then, if you apply these marketing ways that companies usually use to reach the client, then you're going always to have the doors open in the clients. Of course, you need to be brave, because Norbert also in a manner said that well, you are working in a project and then think that you feel, okay, I'm done with this, maybe because it's not of my interest, or maybe because my client doesn't need me anymore, and maybe they need another thing. So you need to be brave and see, okay, if I want to keep this door open, because this is my market, I need to move to another project. Okay, as a company does. You're not an employee. And the second one, which is very related to the first one, is to study, study, and study. You need to be up to date. You need to be in the state of the art. So of course, you can make that with experience, with changing projects, looking always forward to the best innovative projects that you can find. But you also need to study the certifications that Norbert said. Also, in my case, I made a PhD training study. It is exciting.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Rafael, for that. And let's move on to question 5. How has freelancing changed in the past 5 years? And what do you predict will happen in the next 5 to 10 years? Norbert, what do you think?
Well, compared to 5 years ago, there are a lot more open positions for freelancers right now, I think. These are still mainly software-oriented projects, lots of project managers, product owners, and so on. The market has shifted a lot more towards agile. So you'll find a lot more, in the past you found more product management roles, for example. Today it's all product owners, and you need to have the respective certifications behind that. I also see, besides IT roles, more and more other business roles out there. You'll find a lot more marketing or other jobs that were hardly there in the past. When I first started out as a freelancer many, many years ago, I was actually looking for marketing roles. And for the first 10 years, I hardly found anything. That changed by now. Of course, you'll also find more freelancers because the market has shifted there as well. Which means that if you embark on this journey as a freelancer, you need to be very clear about your niche. How do you differentiate from others? How do you differentiate from Rafael, from Sammy, or myself? You need to be clear on that. If you're not clear, why should you, if you start out today, hire you as a newcomer versus me as somebody with 17 years of experience in freelancing, plus many other years as an employee? What I think will happen in the next 5 years, I believe that the freelance market will continue to grow significantly. Why? Freelancers provide flexibility for organizations. It's a lot easier to hire a freelancer, test something out, try to innovate. If it succeeds, you then hire people full-time. If you don't succeed, you let the freelancers go. That's what we are here for in the end. So we provide the expertise and the experiences that is difficult to come by also with normal employees typically, because that's why you in the end reach out to freelancers, because we expect that we have done whatever you ask us to do. Getting the right expert will prove to be a major challenge for companies, even more so in the future than it is today. And not just look at what is happening at the high-tech sector. Both AWS and Microsoft have announced to double the base salary of their tech employees just the last couple of weeks. This will have impact on what we are going to be paid as freelancers as well. Now, that's not really surprising then as a consequence of that, because they'll not find all of those people, just not possible. You know, Samsung just announced that they want to invest $1 billion into AI and other topics. Well, where do they get those people from? And of course, they're not doing all of that and are happy about paying more. They're paying more because that's the only way they can attract additional people and keeping those people. Of course, that I actually also believe, based on this, that the best times for freelancing are really ahead of us. The model of working 20, 30, 40 years at the same company are completely over. They've been over for some time already. But freelancing gives a lot of flexibility for us as freelancers as well. You choose when, where, and how much you work. So you can actually do that depending on your life situation. You should not necessarily take me as an example here naturally, because I just love my work. I work way too much and I enjoy working so much, which is also the reason why I try to keep my utilization on the same level that I've had the last 17 years.
Thank you so much for that. And it's a great prediction. Thank you. Now we have a question which is interesting for the people interested in joining Outvise. Tell us about your freelancing journey at Outvise. Sammy, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, well, it started with an unfortunate event, which is COVID-19. So here I was at home. I couldn't go through all the my regular channels to get the gigs. So I had to go online, and I found Outvise, and it was a great experience. I liked the team, how the team is very professional and friendly. And they have a kind of a personalized attention to the candidates. It's not like you're throwing your CV in a black box, you know. So from there, I went after the consulting gig. There are other tracks also open. For example, the guru track. As my colleagues mentioned here, you need to be on top of things. You need to be at the leading edge. So you have to keep researching all the time and reading. For example, the last article published by Outvise about robotic process automation that I wrote. Also, they have another track called the Scout track. So where they use the senior consultants to interview other consultants in the areas, you know, the very technical areas. So there was a variety of engagements I had with Outvise, and I would say I'm happy about that. And that's why I came to the webinar today.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much for that, Sammy. And Rafael, would you like to share your journey
Yes, of
at
course.
Outvise?
I think that, first of all, that Outvise is unique because there are many freelancing companies. I know Outvise since it was founded, not, I don't know, 10 years ago, I cannot remember now. And my first impression is that it was a reliable company for their clients. Why? Because Outvise has a true and effective database of professionals. Because behind that, you have these artificial intelligence algorithms. So they are always offering you the projects that match your expertise. Okay, so this is my first impression. So if you have a one-stop shopping for freelancers as reliable as Outvise, the best companies are going to use Outvise. So you know that you're going to get very, very good projects. Then secondly, of course, the team. It's very, very serious and at the same time very, very friendly. So you don't feel that you are sending your resume and they are sending it out to the client and that's it. They know you, they know your capabilities, even if there is no this perfect match. Because the client is asking something that you have for the capabilities, they know you, so they can speak in your favor to the client, and so make that match working. So I think that is something that I don't see in other companies. That they just ask for the resume, maybe they tune that, send to the client, and then forget you forever. It's not the case of Outvise. And then, of course, Outvise pays every month the day they say they're going to pay you. Okay, and I think that is also very important for the financial side, that you can sleep good, because you can sleep better if you know that you're going to be paid on time.
Yeah, that's important.
Yes.
Thank you so much for that, Rafael. On to the final panel question. I think this is a great question for the entire panel. What is the right career moment to start freelancing, if there even is one? Should we start with Norbert?
Sure. I personally don't believe there is a right moment to start freelancing. However, there are a lot of wrong reasons to start freelancing. Freelancing is tougher than working as an employee. The reason to start as a freelancer needs to be taken on your individual situation. When I became a freelancer, as I said before, part of the decision was made for me, and I don't regret having moved in that direction. However, if you are in a nice job and the only reason why you want to consider freelancing is because you expect to earn more money, don't bet on that. Most freelancers have a low utilization, below 50% even sometimes. So don't leave your cushy job just because your job is boring. If your job is boring, you're doing something wrong. Freelancing would be an option, of course, but changing your role, your employer, or your attitude might even be better for you. Before you move into freelancing, I strongly recommend to ask yourself, what do you want to achieve in life? If you can live with the fact that you might have 10 to 16-hour days, not regularly, of course, but it happens sometimes. If you're fine with getting up at 3:30 in the morning on a Monday to travel to your customer on a regular basis, that's not what I have been doing for many, many years, each and every week. If you find that sometimes you might not know when the next project will start, when will you get the next payday, even though Outvise pays right on time. However, if the project ends, Outvise won't pay you anymore, so you won't get money. You are not unemployed. You are a freelance consultant, meaning the next project is going to define when you'll be paid the next time. But if you accept that you have a lot of uncertainty, you can also need to accept that you have a lot of freedom. So the freedom actually allows you to have whatever way of life you want to have in this arena. That's why as a German, I'm happy to live right outside of Barcelona, Spain. I would not be able to do that as an employee. And of course, like Rafael and Sammy both stated before, it's great to be your own boss. It's great to have your own one-person company.
Thank you so much, Norbert. That was very insightful. Should we hear from Sammy? Sammy, your mic is off. Oh.
It was that ambulance passing thing, remember I told you. I had to
Yeah. No worries.
So since you are a one-man business, as was stated before by my colleagues, you need to make sure you have a winning business plan, right? So you need to have a good service, which is yourself. So if you're not an excellent performer already in your job, and then please try not to jump too quickly into freelance, because first you need to be successful. There are more challenges. You need to convince the client that you are adding value very quickly compared to an employee. So that's my recommendation. Then there are other factors that can kick in, like if you don't feel you're appreciated enough in your job, although you are performing well, you're feeling unhappy, itching for a change in your life. All these are kind of factors. But the main things, there are two main things. You have to be a hot product. And two, you need to have some financial cushion. You can't be living paycheck to paycheck because in freelance, money is not regular. It doesn't come at the end of every month. So you need to have this safety cushion, monetary wise. And then that's it. Are you open? Is your psychological state, your how they say, the type of person who can handle these kind of challenges, uncertainty, can live with that? Then yes, it is a good time to start. To me, it's going to get better with time. There is still some resistance from many of the corporations to hire freelancer, although the number of open positions went up, but it's still not high enough. Still, a lot of employers may prefer other formulas than the independent freelancer.
Thank you so much, Sammy. And finally, Rafael, would you like to finish off the last question?
Yes, in the past, I used to think that it was better to wait, let's say, 10 years of profession until you start thinking of being a freelancer, 10 or 15, because of what Sammy says, because you are more reliable, you have, it's more clear what you can offer, evaluate also this economic cushion that you need some time to get into it. But after the pandemic, I think that things have changed a lot. Indeed, I have a son, he's now 26 years old. He's working in the UK, but he wants to come back to Spain. Indeed, that know our family home is in Madrid, indeed. And well, now, since he's working remotely from home, he is used to that. And also the companies are also used to hire people that are not living in the same city as the headquarters. So now you have your market as a professional is the world. So why do not take advantage of that? Because you can live in the city that you want. Now he wants to live in Spain because of whatever, but he also wants to work for companies that are as innovative as the British ones, and also he has a curiosity for the Middle East and these cultures. So I think that maybe now, even if you are a junior, you can start thinking of being a freelance. Okay, so I think that now we keep our minds open on that, because if companies are hiring employees that are living outside the headquarters, even outside the country, so there's only a small step to hire a freelance. And if you are a freelance, it's more easier. It's easier for the company to hire you because of legal things, because of the integration on the company, many reasons. Maybe are preventing companies to hiring people from other countries, but if you're a freelance, then there is no problem with that.
Thank you so much. That was really great. Well, that was all we had for the panel discussion. Thank you all so much. Now let's move on to the Q&A. So any question that's been on your mind recently, don't be afraid to ask it in the chat or the Q&A. And I saw we already had some actually. So we have one from Mitul. Where does majority of your pipeline for new opportunities come from? Who wants to take this? Norbert, would you like to share something about this?
Sure, I'm more than happy to do so. So issue that I'm typically facing with pipeline is that I have pretty long running projects, meaning if I personally try to win customers, it's very difficult for me to do so, because typically when they are looking for a specific role, I'm not available, and vice versa. Meaning that most of my pipeline comes from companies like Outvise. I'm pretty well connected in that area by now. I know the companies that I work with. I've had companies similar to Outvise, for example, that have brought me 4 projects into 4 projects by now. So that is the typical way for me to go. I also like to mention on that topic, if you are new to freelancing, the first freelancing role is going to be easy. The second one is the hardest one. It's not the first one typically, because typically the first one is something you win out of your network because somebody needs somebody for whatever reason. But the second one is where typically it gets difficult and sometimes hard.
Yes, I agree on that. The network is not enough. You now need a company like Outvise because of that, because your contacts are a few ones compared to the ones that you have with the Outvise database.
Great, thank you so much. So we have a question from Anand. So how does one go about pricing? Does one talk to different customers and start at a higher price until you find a customer who agrees, or are there standard rates? How do you go about choosing the price? Does anyone want to take this one? Sammy? Yeah.
Can we display it on the screen?
I think you can see it in the chat.
Yeah, you can
Okay.
you can click on chat and
Mm-hmm.
Q&A, and you'll be able to see.
Yeah, the chat.
I can answer if you want me to.
We are now in the chat.
All right. So what I typically do is two things. First is there, of course, a lot of information like Glassdoor, what a typical employee would earn in that same area. Now, you need to consider that an employee, of course, has vacation. You might want to have vacation or not, but that's not something you should calculate into your price simply because you will not be paid if you take vacation. Simple as that. So look at what a typical employee in that same role does. Then, as I do a lot of projects in Germany, I typically at least double that, divide it down to a per day rate. For that, I typically calculate 200 days. Then you have an approximation of that daily rate that you want to go for. If a customer insists on having that as an hourly rate, which I personally hate, of course, divide it by 8. Then you're there. However, that's not necessarily the smartest way of immediately using that as the price that you want to sell to. So add a little bit more on top of that, and then it's talking to Tora and her colleagues in the end when you reach out, because they know what the budget of the customer is. But be smart about this. So don't sell yourself too cheap. That's something I experience so often, especially with fresh freelancers, that they sell way under what they could actually achieve.
Thank you so much, Norbert. We have a question from Julio. Is it better to wait for the best in line with your experience role, or go for different roles, focusing more on the kind of projects and the company you will work for?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that.
Or Rafael, yeah.
Yes,
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, that first of all, it's important that you know which is your professional development. What do you want? For example, I remember that in the past I started working on the video area. Then I changed to other kind of telecom systems. But then I saw that the technology had changed. So I said, okay, I need to revamp myself on this area. So I looked for a company that was working in this new technology, and then approach to them. I think that is the first thing you need to do. But then on the other hand, sometimes you need to be open for the proposals, because it's also important the company, the client. So the other driver is to say, okay, maybe here there is a new area or a new region that they want to explore because of professional or personal reasons. Let's work in whatever they are offering. So it's also good because you are opening your mind.
Yeah, I think this is the discussion that goes about, should you be a generalist or a specialist? And people say that generalists are not as appreciated as specialists, as freelancers. And there should be, it's a misconception. A generalist has a lot of value, and you could be a generalist at the same time specialist in a few areas. Now, this tends to confuse the client. They don't know where to put you, where to place you. So you need to simplify it for them. Say, okay, it's like your product again, and the packaging has to be simple and attractive. So you have to put a few things where you specialize, and then because their expectation is they want immediate value. So there is no time for you as a consultant to learn on the job. So you are better off focusing on your specialties. It will be more credible from the client side. And when you get the job, you would be delivering higher value much quicker.
Thank you so much. We have a question from Harrison. What advice would you give to someone who wants to start freelancing and they don't have lots of professional experience yet?
Well, I think that you can join companies that are not looking for such an experience. This is what I was talking about before. It's a question of offering yourself. Sometimes the company is looking for an experienced professional, but then if you offer and not so experienced, they are also taking it. The opportunity, I mean, okay? So I think that if you want to be a freelance, then you go to the company, even through Outvise, and say, okay, I don't have the experience, but you need to be transparent on that. So okay, this is my experience, these are my attitudes, these are my competencies, and then show that to the client. But for doing that, it's better that you use a company like Outvise, because they're going to build your profile. They know their client. They are speaking with them. So they can say, and it happens sometimes, I don't have this experienced guy, but I have this other one and can match the position. Of course, they are going to pay less because you have not that experience. But I think that I think that today, I think that even if you don't have lots of experience, you can be a freelance, but you have to find the right company to look for the clients.
I think I can comment on that too. Basically, we have to realize that freelancing, it's not all the same. There are tiers of freelancing. At the bottom tier is where, you know, they have platforms where you bid on a job for $100 or something like this. These are usually, you have a lot of the people who are with the lower experience there. Then there is the mid tier where you are being positioned in bigger projects. And then there is the top tier, which is the domain of the top consulting companies in the world, which are well known. Going through them, they are more open to hiring freelancers now, which is encouraging. So you have to target the tier that matches your own skills, your own level of experience. Tier 1, 2, or 3, target well, and you should get started. Then you can progress from a tier to another with time.
Thank you, Sammy. Thank you for that input. And we have a question from Fiona. And do you have any part-time gigs, or are they usually all full-time roles? Norbert?
So I've had part-time gigs, of course. That's not really uncommon, especially since very often even in-country regulations force you to have more than one customer, depending, of course, on the regulation in country and your own legal setup, which is also an important topic to consider here. I personally prefer full-time roles, actually, because it makes my life easier. On average, my projects are pretty long-lasting. They are typically full-time roles, but I've been doing both. Again, it's more a question of what you prefer to do. There are people out there that actually love to have more than one project. I know people that run 5, 6, 7 projects at the same time, which would be not something I'd be happy with what I typically do.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's see. We have some more questions. We have a question from Dina. Do you think nowadays, when remote working is hugely preferred, is it easier or more difficult to start freelancing?
I think it's easier, of course, because you can start a position in any country. Because sometimes if it's face-to-face, you need to relocate since the first day, so you have this difficulty. And now you can accept some jobs that you only need to go, for example, the first month and then be at home, and this kind of hybrid working. And it's not necessarily the face-to-face contact, because now everyone knows how to relate without being face-to-face, because because of the COVID, because of the pandemic, everyone knows how to do that.
I think with the remote work, your target market is much bigger geographically. You can go, I mean, it wouldn't be the whole world. You still have to be able to speak the language. You still have to be able to get employed legally there. So a good thing about Outvise is that they handle a lot of this in between you and that foreign country, the regulations, etc., are handled by Outvise. So as a freelancer, you definitely get more countries to choose from than being face-to-face. You are limited to your own city where you are living, not even a country.
I agree with what both of you said. Nevertheless, typically when I start a new project, I like to meet the people that I work with, because with online meetings, a lot of information gets lost. And in the end, we as freelancers have to very quickly earn trust and show that we have the competencies the customers hired us for. That's a lot more difficult if you do that only online. I believe it's a lot easier if you have this face-to-face component in it. It doesn't mean that you need to do full or always on-site and so on all the time, but especially, let's say, the first couple of workshops, it's, I think, a lot easier if you have the ability to meet with your customer, with the people that work there and so on.
Yes.
Yes, definitely.
Couple of weeks, 1 month, at least. Yes.
Thank you all. We have a question from Jessica. How does freelancing differ depending on which country you are in?
So I would say one of the biggest differences is if I look at, for example, the Spanish market versus the German market, which are the two that I'm pretty familiar with. Of course, I know others, typically daily rates. That's the biggest difference. So I get a lot higher daily rate in Germany than what I would get in Spain, which is one of the reasons why I love to sell to Germany in my case. And of course, being German, that's a lot easier because language-wise, it's pretty simple. So these are the things you need to take into consideration. Do you have the ability to really work with those people on one hand side, because you can't expect everybody to be fluent in English. The second thing is your daily rate will definitely differ. And of course, then there's still legal topics around that as outlined before.
Thank you so much for answering that, Norbert. Let's have one final question. Let's have one from Patricia. Would you say that you have more or less free time since you started freelancing?
I would say it's a mixed bag. Like there are some days where you are working seven days a week because the project is, requires it. And you have the nice breaks between two projects, which you can stretch without asking the HR department to give you, some vacation time. You can choose how much of a break you like, but of course you need to have the financials to do that.
Of course.
So I personally would say I'm working less than what I used to work. But again, my last role was pretty senior. So my normal working week already entailed a lot of traveling, plus at least once per month, a full weekend. Now I hardly have to work on a weekend. Yes, it sometimes happens. Of course, if there is a deadline or if you hand over something that needs to be handed over because there is an event or there is a board meeting or whatever. But besides this is really rare case. Overall, I would say typically I work less than what I used to do.
At the end of the day, at the end of the day, if you are a freelancer, you are free. So you can choose. Once I don't want to work so much, then you can select these offerings that that they are not needing these 7 days a week, for example. Then sometimes you say, okay, I like this job because it's my career. I want the challenge. So it doesn't mean to me in this specific project to be working 7 days a week. Okay, this is your choice, but you have the power to choose. I think this is the important message.
Yes.
Yeah. Anything else? No. Thank you so much. That was the last question we had time for. I just want to say thank you to everyone for signing in to today's webinar. I want to give a special thank you to our guest speakers, Norbert, Rafael, and Sammy, for participating. It has been extremely insightful and we're all very grateful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, before we sign off, I'd just like to say that our next webinar will be held in September. Don't forget to follow Outvise LinkedIn, where we'll keep you updated on everything. See you in September and have an excellent summer, everybody. And thank you all.